Hi, and warm welcome to this session, a part of Sweden Innovation Days. And we will discuss public sector as a driver of innovation and transformation. With me, I have three people that I know are eager to share both success stories and failures, and they want to create a change. So let's start with you, Örjan. Why are you here?
Well, I'm basically here because we have a planet to save, and I think in the public sector, I know there's a lot of things to do that can really help with that mission. We have one thing is to the climate crisis, where we to 2030 need to halve the emissions, and to 2040 we need to halve again. So I think there's a lot of things we can do here in the public sector and improve, so they speed up this process.
So if we continue with you, Lina.
Yes, I have a very similar why. If you look at public procurement on a European level, 16% of the GDP of the European Union consists of public procurement. And research shows that if those 16% are not used to drive innovation and transformation, we will not be able to reach the targets. But if we can use that market potential for new innovative products, we actually stand a chance. So that's very much my why. And that's 2 procurement cycles away. That's less than 7 years.
Continuing with you, Niklas.
Yeah, my why is mostly born out of frustration, I would say. I've been touring around Sweden and met a lot of municipalities, lots of regions, both in my previous role and the role I have currently at Region Östergötland. And I see that if we talk about municipalities, we talk about governmental agencies, we talk about regions, there's a trend, there has been a trend for a very long time that the processes that we work with, they should be more effective. They should be more effective. They should be more effective. But if we talk about how can we tackle the climate crisis, how can we speed up and be better in our welfare systems, we cannot just be more efficient or effective in our process. We need to think new. We need to act new. We need to work in new ways with startups, with academia, with civil society. So that's a frustration that I have. We need to make something happen. We need to change the way we work together. So that's my frustration. It's my why.
Yeah, and I don't have frustration, maybe. I see opportunities and possibilities. From my perspective, it's the startups. I mean, a lot of startups can actually come to that municipality and help them to create change, but they don't see that as a market. So we really need to, in the innovation system, to help the startup to see new markets from the municipalities. So we do have a lot to do there to learn the processes. And I know that we have done a lot. Can we maybe dive into some examples, Lina? What can we do?
Yes, what I see, one tool that we can use where the public sector can drive innovation is through innovation procurement. But one aspect that I think normally is missing from that perspective is the scalability aspect, where you develop a solution that fits the client's needs and you put a lot of work into that effort. And then when you have a solution, you start thinking, maybe this can scale to someone else. If a startup would work like that normally, work together with one client, develop something, test something, and first then start looking at maybe someone else wants this, chances of scaling are not great. So one example that we've done is that we work with an innovation procurement process, but we add a scalability to it into a scalable procurement process where you wave in that perspective from the start and integrate that and business development, etc., into the process. And that it's quite a new process, but it's promising so far.
Niklas?
Yeah, and what Lina is saying, I think is essential here. We need to work both with the public sector. How can they be more, I wouldn't say interested, be more engaged and have more knowledge on how to work with startups? But also how can the support system that we have in Sweden be more able to help startups, scale-ups, to do business with the public sector and to think and to understand and think about scalability in a more sense. And I know this, I have met a lot of public procurers and they want to do this. I met a lot of innovation managers and they want to do this, but it's kind of difficulties in the structures and the culture within, for example, a municipality. they are more used to work with service design, innovation management in their own organization. But when we come to how to work with startup scale-ups, it's kind of still try to find new ways on how to do it. So these types of methods, these type of tools I think are essential. And if we talk, just one more thing, if we talk about innovation procurement, many people, many organizations, they think, oh, this long project that takes 3, 4, 5 years, we need to get away from that type of perspective and view. We can do it much more agile, we can do it much more efficient and much more in the short term, and you have that scalability imprinted from the start. So it doesn't have to be this long, big projects. It's more about what kind of challenges do I have as a public procurer, as a municipality, and can I prioritize and maybe do something in that area and try to do this, and also in cooperation with other municipalities. So have the scalability imprinted from the beginning.
But is it that we are, I mean, we have a lot to learn from the startup mindset. They are agile, they want to test and learn and do it small. Is it that we are thinking too big? These large projects, large pilots, or can we actually, what is the kind of thing we need to really push into the municipalities?
I think you have a good point. I think they need to think about more in this agile perspective. But when I met, for example, a lot of municipalities around, both big municipalities like Stockholm, but also smaller municipalities, they think agile and think small projects, but that's just one. How do you say förvaltning in Swedish? One department of the municipality, for example, and one person that drives this change, and it's not. They do not think on how they need to scale this solution in their own organization. They can be more agile in a test project and a pilot, but how to take the next step, how to scale it in their own organization, and also how to scale it to other organizations. They're not that used to those aspects. So that's a challenge, I would say, not a problem, because we have tools for it, but we need to.
So I mean, one challenge is, of course, maybe that we are afraid to fail as well. We need to fail and learn. So I know, Lina, that you have done a lot of testing and failures as well. Can you share some and what you learn about it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what we see, I mean, we've been working a lot with the startups. I also come from the startup side. We're starting an accelerator and an incubator and so on. And what we learned that it's, I mean, as we talk about the business development and helping the startups to see the public sector as a market, is of course a necessity, and we don't do enough of that. But if the market don't see the startups as potential suppliers, it doesn't help how good the startups are. We need to work on both sides. And that's also one of the reasons that I started diving into more of the public side to create the conditions for these collaborations to happen. And what we also see is that in the public sector, I mean, always when you work with innovation, you're taking a risk. I mean, you cannot plan success in that way. You don't know what's happening. It has to be a bit of a discovery journey into the unknown, and that means taking risks. And the more you try to avoid the risk by excessive planning, etc., the longer the process takes. And you can never avoid the risks altogether. So you create a bit of a false security with long, costly processes trying to avoid failure, instead of twisting things around and say, like, how can we accept that the failure might happen and then make that those consequences as small as possible. You can divide the process into small steps, evaluate often, which is kind of the agile way of working. But if you have budget allocation processes where you need detailed descriptions long time before, it's very difficult to get into that kind of way of working. So that is definitely, challenges that we have had in the past. The startups are there and they're prepped, but the customer side, the public sector side, is not able to meet them there.
Do you agree, Niklas?
Yeah, definitely. I worked with a couple of municipalities, and this budget allocation is certainly a challenge, because that municipality that I worked with, I think that this is a general observation. It's not just this municipality. They could do different types of innovation projects. They could go in with applications to Horizon, etc., to Tillväxtverket, and do innovation projects. But then it comes to the next step. Okay, we need to invest in this. And it's a different type of budget, and also it wasn't. There were no incentives for those departments to implement and to work with those aspects, to implement and scale up it in their own organization. So that's one aspect. And if we're talking about risks, I see both a challenge and a possibility, really, because as we are in several types of crises right now, not only in Sweden, but in an international level. And these challenges provides a challenge. No, it provides a possibility, because many companies now probably want to do more business with the public sector. So that's a potential. But there's also a challenge, because the public sector are kind of more risk mitigating right now, because many of these startups or scale-ups, what will happen if they go bankrupt? How can we work with them if that risk is higher? So here I think our organizations and lots of other organizations need to help both the public sector and the startup scene in how can we do business and somehow address those risks and not be too afraid of those risks, because we need to make those business happen if we are going to tackle this crisis that Örjan mentioned earlier. So we need to help them. The support system, the scale, the clusters, the science parks, etc. We need to work both with public sector and the startup scene.
And if I dive into just a short example before I let you dive into your example, Örjan, is the municipality of Umeå, where I think we, as an incubator, really had to put in a lot of work to help the startup and to kind of secure that place of that they will. So if they will not be able to, how can we help them? How can we meet their need with someone else? How can we do all the supports to make it a successful project? It might be a business developer that are a project leader for that pilot, or whatever support it's needed, maybe some other financing. How can we actually in the system put all our resources to make it happen? I think that's really important, and I think a lot of our incubator friends, science parks, need to be aware of this opportunity. It's really there to do a lot with our support. But we have one more example, Örjan. I mean, you have the how can we actually maximize if we work with Borlänge, for example. Can you just take us through how you have worked with Borlänge?
Yes, so we try to leverage the possibilities with the public sector and a city as Borlänge right now. And so we really did a deeper analysis in Borlänge. What are the needs here? How can we lower emissions? And we ended up with the transport, how to go to work and back as one of the sweet spots where we can make a big difference. So, I mean, the need analysis is really important to start with. And as you were saying that basically that's where we want to find the scale already. I mean, there's so many other municipalities or cities that have the same need. Yeah. So we should collect that from the start. We have done that in this project to some extent. We connected, I think, about 10 or 12 other cities. So they are kind of following this work. How is it progressing? So they can get interested, and they also can be ready as a buyer to the startups that can provide these solutions later on. So I think that's a good model to try to make a case, and you try to get interested other customers, so to speak, in the public sector. Early on, exactly, yeah. Really early on. So I think that's a good model.
Like you mentioned earlier, Lina, so it's not when they are ready that we put on.
Exactly, because I mean, I like to think of innovation not being limited only by supply, but also by demand. I mean, if there's no demand for these innovative solutions, they're not going to scale. That's pretty simple. And in terms of public sector, you do a lot of, as you mentioned, with innovation management and service design, etc. It's a lot of finding the real needs of your own users, which is not a bad thing. I mean, obviously it's a good thing, but it might lead to not looking too much in the external world. And I just remember one specific workshop that we had in this Borlänge project with 12 other cities, I think. When we started that workshop, we were talking about the mobility challenge in Borlänge. And the ideas were that, yeah, but we have got different conditions. Some city has no parking lots, other cities has too many parking lots. It's not relevant. But after diving into this for 3 hours, what everyone said in the end was like, it turned out that this challenge, we all share it. There are some aspects that are different, but whatever solutions that can address Borlänge's need of finding better green mobility solution and lower the carbon emissions are interesting to at least look at for the other municipalities. So I think then you start a demand for what's new already before you even start looking at the solutions, which I think is a way to go.
Sure, take.
Yeah, I have several aspects I would like to address, but I'm just going to concentrate on a few. So you might be wondering why I'm standing here, because I'm working with regional development at Region Östergötland. I'm not representing the healthcare organization, but I will correlate with the things that Örjan and Lina said, because in a regional development sense, my role is we have certain strengths in Östergötland, and there are strengths in Norrbotten and strengths in Västerbotten, where we have booming business, startups, scale-ups, big companies, and we have research in world class. So we try to address those areas, we try to strengthen those areas, and when I go and meet municipalities in Östergötland, they have a lot of challenges. So how can we match those strengths, those competences, those resources with the challenges? And then we come into these needs, and can we then coordinate and mobilize through different missions? And then public procurement, demand solutions, mission-driven innovation comes into play, because we cannot do that on our own, in our own organization, in our own municipalities. But what will happen if we, for example, make 10 municipalities work together on a joint mission? How can we mobilize together with startups? How can we mobilize together with academia? Then we need to address aspects of public procurement, regulations, policy, etc. So I would say that's also a point of view I'm trying to do something with in Östergötland. So that's why I'm here in a regional development sense. The other thing I would like to say is also, you were mentioning it, Maria. In my previous work, I saw public procurers, they try to work with innovation procurement. I saw the innovation ecosystem, the innovation support system. They were interested in how can we make business with public procurement, but they were not really aware of how the municipalities function and how they could address or how they can make business. But now those two worlds have met, I would say, in those last couple of years. So it's a big trend where we can perhaps do a big change with the tools and methods that has been developed through Ignite Public, through the demand acceleration, but also other tools. And so I see now is maybe the point where we can make this change and we can go forward and do something about my frustration and why the climate crisis, etc. So I think we have, now is the time to make some action, I would say.
So do you agree, Örjan?
Yes, I think, I mean, also when going together like this, you lessen the risk, and there's a lot of good effects by doing this as a bigger bunch of demand owners. And I think also another good thing with this to go together more, to get more procurement power together in that sense, is also it's difficult to procure impact, to procure things to get effect, and we want to get the effect. We want to get different less emissions, so to speak, as one thing, one effect. And we need to get really much better on measuring effects and how to also make a I mean, we're very good at it when it comes to the economic sense. Yeah. We're very good at making budgets and calculate what it costs and quantify in this sense. But when it comes to the impact, it's really, we're not as mature there when it, how much impact do we get? And that's half of the KPI. You want to get as much impact per SEK or whatever. So I think this is something we really need to develop, and it's much easier when we go together. We need to be stronger in that rather than one city doing it here, one city doing it there. And we need tools for that.
And we need tools, and I'm thinking the system. So if we just take the bigger picture, what's needed in the system? How can we kind of really take the next step? You mentioned measurement tools. Is it anything more that you see like, okay, these guys should do this? And what do you see?
I mean, I see that there are a lot of things when it comes to impact that we already have.
Yeah.
IPCC showed us last year that we have the solutions to halve the emissions to 2030, and so it's just about procuring them. And with what you're frustrated about to be better at these things, but then the halving to 2040, that's when the startups really are needed to start getting business now, doing the pilots now, and start to scale up to reach that goal. So I mean, I'm all for what you are telling us about how to improve the demand-led development and helping the startups to develop what we need, basically.
What do you say, Lina? What's needed in the system?
I would say that looking at all the different initiatives that are happening now, and what Niklas was talking about, is that you see that more and more actors are coming together. You're finding solutions for different kind of aspects of the problem. There are lots of project funding in this field right now, where you have the innovation procurement in the EU innovation agenda and so on. I think very much is the time. What is needed is that we kind of stand fairly steady in this analysis. This is what's needed. And there are many ways to get there, and there are many aspects we need to cover. So some kind of synchronization between all these different efforts without boxing it into one big call where everyone needs to agree about everything. That is what's needed. We are working on it. We are forming this kind of network, this kind of shared analysis, and we need to do that even more. So we can both work with what already shows that it works, scale and develop that, but then also fill in the gaps. What is needed? What are we already not addressing? But still see this as a joint effort and a movement where we together are trying to address this from different perspectives.
And I just have to add before you, Niklas, I think we need time, in a sense of our own time, to actually create that space where we can connect in the system, where we can use our resources in a really effective way instead of working in silos. But we are running and doing a lot of things. So I think what we have started, we actually have meetings almost every week just to actually synchronize. It's not with a clear agenda every time, but we kind of have the same mission and why. So that helps us.
Yeah. And I think that in all kinds of innovation, and this is also, innovation, everything that we're working with, the processes and projects and whatever we are doing, there's always transaction costs. I mean, how do you find the right knowledge? How do you find the right partner? How do you benefit from information that's already there in your own discovery journey towards how to create value? And by gathering and lowering those transaction costs, by creating stronger relationships and ways to share knowledge, so to make sure that you build on the knowledge that's actually there instead of starting reinventing the wheel, I think that's very important, because that creates a lot of efficiency and conditions for a more efficient innovation process.
What do you say, Nick?
What to add?
What's
I'm very curious about this, how to measure impact. So, and I would say your organization, Örjan, I think have a critical role in helping both the public procurement side, but also the startup side in those aspects. So I would love to see those kind of tools and methods on how to do it, because that's something I've been struggling with for many years. But that aside, I think much of what Lina has said, but also increased knowledge. And I've seen the knowledge has been increased the last couple of years, where we can be better to work together. And so it's more of knowledge about the support system, knowledge about startups, knowledge about the public sector, and form this kind of movement or network, or where we have this joint why, this joint mission, and develop tools as we go. But most important is to have this why. Why should we work with public procurement? Why should we work with demand acceleration? Why should we work with Ignite Public? Because it's probably one of those most important tools to tackle the climate crisis. We need to work together between the public, the private side, the academia, the civil society, and public procurement is underutilized tool for that. Underused potential for it. So this movement, I think, lays the groundwork for developing tools and working together.
And I agree, and I stick to that the innovation system. If we talk as incubators and science park accelerators, needs to really learn how to work and see it as a potential market. I mean, is so much potential, and this is to, I mean, we work with the startups to see where can they actually make the biggest change. How can we measure it? How can we kind of then match it to see where is that right customer, where they make the biggest change? So how can we in the system help them with that? That's kind of my biggest why right now, because there is so much potential there. And there is so much to do. I mean, we need to learn from each other. We need to have the examples. We need to learn from failures and see how we can actually make that small adjustments to make it happen even quicker. But if we round it up with a call to action, that's kind of what's the next step? What's the most important thing? Maybe a little bit about your takeaway here. If we start with you, Örjan.
Well, I think I have to say it again then that how to judge, assess how much impact we can make, having a solution from a startup or whatever. That is very critical for us to work in our ordinary way, to calculate, we want to do this, we want to finance this, we want to invest in this. I think we have to have numbers, a much better quality on those numbers. So I think we have to develop that together by trying, by iterating, by evolving it.
Thank you. Lina, what do you say?
Yeah, I have one action for both sides, so to say. From the startup side, even if it's a startup or a business developer, I don't know how many times I've heard, I don't know anything about public procurement. And of course, no one knows anything about public procurement when they're born. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's something you learn along the way. But it's 5 principles, and if you know those, you get quite a bit forward with that, and you can. So my call to everyone that's working in a startup or business development and has the public sector as some kind of potential call is just look up those 5 basic principles of public procurement. That will take you 30 seconds. That's not. It's not crazy. From the public procurement side, whenever you think, maybe we should do a design project, maybe we should do an innovation project, maybe whatever, look around and see what's in the market. What knowledge is already there? What studies have been done? Has there been done any needs analysis in another place where you can learn from? You don't need to start everything from the start. Are there already solutions on or near the market that could help you solve your problem? Start looking around what's going on outside your own organization. That's my second takeaway.
I would like to spin a bit on what Lina said. For startups, for scale-ups, I think the public market is a market that has a lot of potential. It can be very interesting for you. Find the person, the department that has the need. It is seldom the public procurer you should talk to, have dialogue with. And those 5 principles that Lina mentioned is, don't be scared of the regulation. It's those 5 principles that it's the most essential to know, and how public procurement is organized and processes, how they work with those processes. It's those 5 principles. For the public sector, as I mentioned in the beginning, we cannot just work with processes and make them more effective. We need to work with new actors, with new organizations, with startups, with scale-ups, with civil society, with academy. We need to work in new ways. We need to look at the tools that Örjan is developing, I would hope, in how to measure impact. We need to work with the science parks, the incubators, the clusters, the accelerators, because they have knowledge. Turn to them and ask them for help. And where can we find those companies that have solutions to our problems? And we need to mobilize. We need to create this movement. We need to work together. And I would hope this is a beginning for that. So if I take the word, that this can be a beginning, that we can work together, different organizations, and create this movement and help us tackle this climate crisis that we have before us.
And you mentioned time is now, and a lot of things are going on. So I'm thinking this, can I call a friend? Could that be a way of just not saying, I don't know anything about that? So my call to action would be to all the business developer, project managers, all those working with this, that call a friend before you actually start to do something by yourself. I mean, to really learn more. At an incubator, we need to see the public sector as a potential market. We need to help the startup to see that theory of change. Where can they actually make the biggest effect? And how can we measure it? And how can we then scale it to many, many more? And it's a huge potential, and things are happening now. And we need to be aware, and we need to share with each other so we can actually learn more. Did you need the final word, Lina?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I saw that you wanted to add something more.
I'm a business developer at heart, right? I come from the startup side. We have incubators and accelerators, and that's pretty much where I started. And then I noticed that, being a business developer, it's quite a demanding job. There's loads of things you need to know. Yeah. You need to know the lean startup methodology. You need to know how investment works. You need to know how you build a team. You need to understand sustainability. There's a lot of things that you need to know. IPR, the legal aspects, a lot of things. But for some reason, how public procurement works is not considered one of those things. And how the public market works and how to do business with public sector is, in general, not considered being one of those aspects where you at least need to have a basic knowledge so you can guide your startup in the right direction. So that would be my call to action to anyone, any incubator, accelerator, or other kind of business development or support function, is include that in your curriculum for the people working in your organization, that they need to have at least basic knowledge, so they can identify where more knowledge is needed and more support is needed. That's a call to action.
I agree. And we have a lot of things going on. Ignite Public, you have a lot of things going on, and we will share. So let's start here. Thank you so much for joining. And this is just a start, right? Let's keep it happening and make more impact. Thank you so much for being a part of this session.
Thank you.
Thank you.